So what if I told you that the folders on your computer desktop, like those harmless little yellow squares you click on every single day,
Yeah.
what if those exact folders are the reason artificial intelligence might, I mean, accidentally break the entire global economy?
I mean, it sounds like hyperbole, right? But it really isn't.
Right. Today, we are getting into a manifesto that claims we basically have to physically rebuild the entire architecture of the internet.
The whole
The whole thing. We have to abandon screens entirely and, almost as a footnote, eradicate extreme global poverty.
just a casual Tuesday to-do list.
Right. Because the argument is if we don't do all three of those things, we just don't survive the decade.
It is this incredibly dense, massive web of dependencies. The author is basically arguing that you just cannot divorce software engineering from human morality anymore.
And that collision is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. I mean, we are sitting here, it's April 2026, and the ground is just shifting under our feet in real time.
Oh, totally.
Just look at the last few weeks. We're seeing things that were literally considered science fiction 3 years ago, becoming, mundane Tuesday afternoon news.
Yeah, the pace is staggering.
We've got the rollout of GPT 5.5 powering these wild multi-step executions across completely different platforms.
Right.
And then we have DeepSeek V4 dropping with its million token context windows, which, just to ground that for you listening for a second, means the AI can hold the equivalent of like several massive novels in its active short-term memory at once.
Without forgetting the beginning of the conversation.
Exactly.
And that completely changes the paradigm. I mean, AI agents are no longer speculative at this point.
No, they're here.
They really are. They aren't just cute chatbots you ask for a pancake recipe anymore. They are autonomous actors.
Doing actual work.
Right. They're doing actual work, they're negotiating, and they're executing workflows independently.
Which brings us to the core subject of the deep dive today. We are digging into this sweeping, highly provocative essay by Paramendra Kumar Bhagat,
Titled Netizen, New Operating Systems, User Interfaces, and a New Internet.
Yes. And our mission today is to explore two staggeringly ambitious ideas from this text that they collide head-on.
They really do.
First, there's the complete architectural redesign of the internet to support these non-human actors.
Right, the agents.
And second, this radical economic proposal that claims we literally cannot safely build this new internet without entirely eradicating global extreme poverty first.
And that second point, I think, is where most technologists would just trip up immediately.
Oh, for sure.
The reflex is to separate the two things, to say, let the politicians handle poverty. I'm just here to build an operating system.
Stay in your lane, basically.
Exactly. But Bhagat's entire thesis rests on the idea that they are mechanically inseparable. You cannot pull them apart.
And if you're listening to this, you might be wondering how an operating system upgrade connects to global poverty.
It's a leap.
It is a huge leap. I had the exact same reaction. But stick with us, because the way this author connects the dots will fundamentally rewrite how you view the digital world.
Let's start with the catalyst for the whole essay, actually.
Yeah, let's do that. The spark was a tweet, right, from OpenAI's Sam Altman, just a bit ago in April 2026.
Right. Altman put out this seemingly simple observation. He basically said, it is time to seriously rethink operating systems, user interfaces, and the internet itself.
So they work for the AI.
Exactly. So they are equally usable by autonomous agents as they are by humans. And Bhagat, the author of our source material, replied with a simple, now we're talking.
Okay, so let's explore why that's such a massive deal. Like, why does an AI agent even care about my operating system?
Well, because right now we are forcing highly sophisticated artificial intelligence to navigate a digital environment built exclusively for human hands and human eyes.
Oh, I see.
Think about the desktop metaphor we use today. It was invented in the 1980s at Xerox PR.
Right, the whole files and folders thing.
Yes. It assumes a single human user sitting in a physical chair using a mouse to mimic picking up a manila folder and placing it into a metal filing cabinet.
Which is crazy when you think about it.
Yeah.
Using a standard OS today to manage AI agents is it's like trying to run a modern multinational corporation using only a physical Rolodex and a landline.
That is a perfect analogy. You have all this incredible intelligence, but the infrastructure itself is a massive bottleneck.
It's just choking the system.
Exactly. And let's take that a step further. Computers for the last 40 years have been built to amplify calculation.
Right.
You put data in, it does math, it gives you a spreadsheet. But agentic computing, that amplifies coordination.
Coordination between the agents.
Yes.
Ah.
These agents need to talk to other agents, verify identities, negotiate prices, execute contracts.
At light speed.
Exactly. So when you force an agent to, like, visually click a virtual button on a human graphical user interface, you are introducing massive latency and points of failure.
It's basically making a supercomputer operate a puppet. And it's not just inefficient, right? It's getting dangerous. I mean, the source material references some of the recent news we've seen on the sidebar about AI swarms hijacking democracy.
And that is the stark reality of what happens when autonomous actors operate on systems built only for slow human verification.
Because the systems can't tell the difference.
Exactly. Our current internet and our social platforms rely on friction. They rely on the time it takes a human to read, react, and type.
Right, the human speed limit.
But when a million AI agents can generate synthetic outrage or coordinate a harassment campaign or, manipulate a financial market in 3 seconds, the underlying infrastructure just buckles.
It just snaps.
It cannot distinguish between a legitimate human action and an automated swarm.
Okay, so the tech world obviously sees this bottleneck.
Mm-hmm.
Investors see it, the developers see it, and they're all just salivating over this new frontier.
Oh, it's a gold rush.
It really is. Building the new Agent OS is the next trillion-dollar gold rush. But this is exactly where the author slams the brakes so hard you can almost smell the rubber.
This is the massive pivot.
Right. He points to this glaring ancient reality sitting right beneath all this shiny new code.
This defines the entire essay. Bagot points out that hundreds of millions of human beings still live in extreme poverty.
Right.
They lack basic caloric security, let alone access to digital infrastructure. And the author argues that building an agentic future on top of this mass deprivation isn't just morally grotesque.
It's a catastrophic systems engineering failure.
Exactly.
Which is such a wild way to phrase it.
Oh.
He frames poverty as an engineering failure, not a cultural deficit, not just like a tragic inevitability of human history, but a systemic bug.
A bug in the code of society.
Yeah. Specifically, he calls extreme poverty the largest alignment problem humanity has ever tolerated.
And the word alignment is carrying so much weight here.
For the people listening, break down what alignment means in this context.
So in AI development, the alignment problem is the challenge of ensuring an artificial intelligence acts in accordance with human values and goals.
Making sure it doesn't turn evil, basically.
Right. The fear is that an unaligned superintelligence might optimize for a goal that destroys us.
Like the classic thought experiment.
Yeah.
Right? Where you tell an AI to make paperclips.
The paperclip maximizer.
Yeah. And it decides the most efficient way to do that is to just harvest all the carbon in human bodies to build more paperclip factories.
Exactly. It did what you asked, but it wasn't aligned with human survival. But the author flips that script entirely here.
How so?
Well, he looks at the elite frontier founders. People like Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Dario Amodei, Demis Hassabis, Jensen Huang.
The architects.
Right. These individuals are currently trying to convince the world that they can solve the existential alignment problem of superintelligence. They go to summits, they speak to Congress, they talk about containing recursive self-improvement.
Wait, let's clarify that term real quick for the listener. Recursive self-improvement.
Sure.
That's the terrifying compounding math, right? Where an AI gets smart enough to rewrite its own code, making it even smarter, which allows it to write even better code.
Until it just blasts past human comprehension in a matter of hours.
Right. It just goes vertical.
And that is the primary existential fear in the tech world. But the author's argument is devastatingly straightforward.
Lay it out.
He says, if these brilliant elite founders cannot coordinate to solve a known, solvable empirical problem like extreme poverty, they will absolutely fail to coordinate on stopping recursive self-improvement.
He's basically saying, look at your track record.
Exactly. He is saying that if our current economic operating system tolerates the exclusion of billions of people from basic dignity, which he actually calls misalignment made flesh, then why would we believe we can build a perfectly aligned digital superintelligence?
Because we haven't even aligned our own species yet.
Exactly. How do you teach an AI to value human life when your economic system clearly doesn't?
But wait, let me play devil's advocate here. Because we pay taxes, right? If I'm a tech founder listening to this deep dive, my immediate reaction is that this feels like a massive shakedown.
Oh, completely. It feels like feature creep.
Massive feature creep. I'm building neural networks. I'm trying to cure cancer with protein folding. Why is it a private tech founder's responsibility to fix a broken water system or an agricultural supply chain in a developing nation.
Governments literally exist for this exact purpose.
Exactly. It feels like moral blackmail. Fix poverty or you can't launch your app.
And that is the most natural pushback. Why bypass the state? But the author anticipates this and points to the sheer velocity of the era we are entering.
The speed of it all.
Right. The argument is that governments inherently lag behind the compounding speed of technology.
So it's basically a math problem. The tech is moving exponentially and the legislation is moving linearly.
Even worse than linearly sometimes. Think about traditional wealth taxes, which is usually the proposed solution.
Right. Tax the billionaires?
Sure, but even if every single nation agreed to a global wealth tax tomorrow, it would take decades to draft the treaties, build the enforcement mechanisms, and route the money through all those bureaucratic channels.
By which point it's too late.
Exactly. Meanwhile, AGI, artificial general intelligence, could arrive in a matter of years. The state just moves too slow to act as the firewall.
And the text also takes a pretty massive swing at traditional charities and NGOs too, doesn't it?
It really does. It dismisses the traditional non-governmental organization model as bloated and inefficient.
Just too much red tape.
Too much red tape, yeah. The text notes that massive percentages of funding are often lost to administrative overhead, consulting fees, and logistical friction long before a single dollar actually reaches someone in need.
So if the governments are too slow and the NGOs are too bloated and inefficient, what is the actual lever here?
Direct action. Direct action by the very people building the exponential technology.
Okay.
The author lays out this highly specific, highly radical proposal. He says that every single founder of a frontier AI company must permanently and irrevocably donate 10% of their equity to a foundation dedicated solely to ending extreme poverty.
Wait, I really want to drill down to that word, equity.
Yes, not profits.
Not 10% of their annual profits. Not some charitable pledge to give away their wealth when they die. 10% of the underlying stock of the company itself.
It is a profound distinction, and the author makes it very clear why. Donating profit is giving away the exhaust of the engine. Donating equity is giving away a piece of the engine itself.
That's a great way to put it.
The author calls this infrastructure, not charity. It is a moral down payment required to build trust.
Because the power scale is just shifting so wildly.
Right, because if these companies achieve what they're actually trying to achieve, they will soon wield power that completely dwarfs sovereign nations.
Okay, let's play this out. Let's say the founders agree. They hand over the 10% equity.
Yeah.
We suddenly have this massive foundation with billions, or realistically, trillions of dollars in backing.
Easily trillions.
How does it actually solve the problem without falling into the exact same traps as the governments and the NGOs?
By operating the foundation exactly like a hyper-efficient AI startup?
So move fast and break things, but for poverty.
Sort of. Obsessive focus on measurable metrics, rapid iteration, and zero bureaucracy. And the method they use to actually eliminate poverty is singularly focused.
What is it?
Direct cash transfers.
Just unconditional cash.
Yes.
They aren't dropping bags of rice off the back of a truck, and they aren't sending Western consultants to teach people how to farm. They are literally just sending money.
No strings attached.
There is a quote in the essay that I just cannot stop thinking about. It goes, "If poverty is a fire, cash is water, not a lecture about fire safety."
It's such a brilliant line because it cuts right through decades of paternalistic development policy.
Oh, absolutely.
Extreme poverty is so frequently misunderstood by the wealthy as a complex cultural deficit or, a lack of education or work ethic.
Like if they just pulled themselves up by their bootstraps.
Exactly. But the economic reality, as the author points out, is that poverty is simply a closed loop of absolute scarcity.
Right. When you have zero capital, you have zero buffer.
Zero. You cannot take even a microscopic risk. If you are a farmer living on $1 a day, you cannot risk buying a slightly more expensive drought-resistant seed.
Because if it fails, your family starves that week.
Exactly. You cannot keep your child in school because you need their labor in the field today just to survive tomorrow.
It's just a constant, exhausting state of treading water.
But the evidence cited in the text from all these basic income experiments demonstrates that when you inject unconditional cash into that environment, it acts as, quote, freedom in liquid form.
Freedom in liquid form. I love that.
It breaks the loop. People don't squander it on alcohol or whatever the stereotype is.
Right, the data shows they don't.
Malnutrition drops. Small businesses are formed. Children stay in school. It respects the fundamental intelligence of the recipient to know exactly what their own family needs most at that exact moment.
Which is so much more dignified. It's an elegant theory. But, I mean, practically speaking, how on earth do you execute that?
The logistics.
Think about the logistics. How do you physically get liquid capital to hundreds of millions of unbanked people living in incredibly remote areas without a massive chain of middlemen?
Local politicians, warlords.
Corrupt officials just skimming half of it off the top. It sounds physically impossible to do this cleanly.
It absolutely sounds impossible until you realize the author isn't speaking hypothetically here.
Wait, really?
Yeah. A massive planetary-scale prototype for this exact system already exists, and it functions perfectly every single day.
Oh, wow.
India. The author points to India's digital public infrastructure as the exact blueprint.
Okay, let's talk about India's stack, because from a systems engineering perspective, it is basically a miracle.
It truly is.
We are talking about the Aadhaar and UPI ecosystem. Let's break this down for the listener who might not be familiar with it. What exactly is Aadhaar?
So, Aadhaar is the world's largest biometric identity system. It provides over 1 billion people in India with a verifiable digital identity tied directly to their physical being.
So fingerprints and iris scans.
Exactly. Fingerprints and iris scans linked to a unique 12-digit number.
Over 1 billion people.
Yep.
People who, before this, might not have even had a birth certificate.
Exactly.
Or any physical documentation that proved they legally existed to the state. And suddenly, their identity is mathematically verifiable anywhere in the country.
And that is the first pillar, verifiable identity. You have to know who you are interacting with.
Right. And the second pillar.
The second pillar is UPI, which stands for the Unified Payments Interface.
Right.
This is an open-source API structure that allows for real-time interoperable money transfers between literally any bank or digital wallet at near zero cost.
So, wait, explain for me how those two pillars actually interact in the real world. How does a fingerprint unlock a bank account in milliseconds?
It all works because of the open API architecture.
Okay.
An API application programming interface is essentially a universal translator that allows different software systems to talk to each other securely.
Right.
So, when an unbanked person in a rural village presses their thumb to a cheap biometric scanner attached to a merchant's phone, the API instantly pings the central Aadhaar database to verify the identity and simultaneously pings the UPI network to authorize a transfer of funds.
And it happens in seconds.
Milliseconds.
Yeah.
It creates a reality where you can have banking without physical banks. You can have instant settlement without physical cash.
That is incredible.
And most crucially for the author's proposal, it allows a central entity to deliver government benefits or direct cash transfers straight into the digital wallet of the intended recipient.
Completely bypassing the entire chain of corruption.
Exactly.
No local official ever touches the money. The money moves from the central treasury directly to the biometric recipient.
The author describes this as architectural genius. It functions like an invisible digital highway.
As opposed to what we have now.
Right. Unlike building disconnected toll roads where every single bank has its own proprietary system, India built a public utility layer that any app or service can just plug into.
So, taking that back to the core argument of the essay, the author is suggesting that this new tech foundation, fueled by the AI billionaire's equity, takes this Aadhaar UPI blueprint and just exports it globally.
Yes.
They don't wait for UN treaties. They don't ask for permission. They just go to developing nations, offer to lay down this digital public infrastructure for free, and use it to blast a baseline income floor directly to the most marginalized people on Earth.
He calls it building a planetary poverty firewall.
A planetary poverty firewall. Okay, let's run with a thought experiment. Let's say this massive infrastructure play actually works.
The dream scenario.
Right. The equity's transferred, the digital highway is built globally, the unconditional cash flows, and the closed loop of scarcity is finally broken. Extreme poverty is systematically eradicated.
Okay.
The author argues that only then, once this moral baseline is fully established, are we actually ready to architect the new agentic internet?
Because now we have the trust and the alignment.
Exactly. We've built the foundation. So now, what does the house we build on top of it actually look like? Because the essay says the very first thing we do is burn the traditional desktop to the ground.
And this brings us to the actual technical blueprint, Agent OS, or what some people are calling Intent OS.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. The fundamental premise of this new operating system is the complete demolition of the user interface we have relied on for decades.
There is no desktop, no app launcher,
Yeah.
No grid of colorful little squares on your phone.
They're all gone. And to understand why the desktop has to die, we really have to look at a prompt example the author provides. It perfectly illustrates the shift from manual computation to agentic coordination.
Oh, the Tokyo example.
Yes, read that one.
Let me read this exactly as it's laid out in the source, because it is wild. Imagine waking up, speaking into the room, and just saying, book me the cheapest flight to Tokyo next month that leaves after 10 a.m., optimize for carbon footprint, reserve a capsule hotel near Shinjuku, schedule an omakase reservation based on my last 5 favorites, and negotiate with my calendar to block 3 evenings for street food exploration.
It just keeps going.
It does. Also, check whether my Tokyo contacts want to meet, and alert me if there are deals on vintage camera gear while I'm there.
Now analyze the mechanics of that request under our current paradigm. That is not a search query.
No. If I had to do that today, that's my entire Sunday afternoon gone.
Easily.
Think about the friction. I have Expedia open on one tab, a carbon calculator on another, Google Maps open to find the distance from the capsule hotel to Shinjuku Station.
You're exhausted just describing it.
I really am. I'm cross-referencing Yelp for the sushi. I'm opening Outlook to check my calendar. I'm sending manual WhatsApp messages to my contacts. And I'm setting up eBay alerts for the camera gear. It's a dozen different data silos that stubbornly refuse to talk to each other.
And the text rightly points out that executing that prompt today is essentially a multi-department corporate project.
Truly.
But AgentOS executes it in seconds.
That stands.
And to make that possible, the underlying architecture has to fundamentally change, starting with how we actually store information.
So let's look under the hood. What happens to our files? If I don't have folders anymore, how on earth do I find anything? Is the AI just reading my mind, or is there a new filing system?
The whole concept of hierarchical files and folders disappears entirely.
Really?
Yeah. Right now, data is stored in a rigid tree structure. You have to remember the physical path, right? Like C drive, documents, work, 2026 Q2, and then hope you named the file correctly.
Right, and if you accidentally dragged it into the downloads abyss, it's just gone forever.
Exactly. It's a terrible system for human memory. But AgentOS replaces this with what the author calls semantic knowledge graphs.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means you no longer look for a file name, you ask for meaning.
How does the OS know what something means, though? Is it just searching all the text inside the document?
It's far deeper than just a keyword search. A semantic graph maps the relationships between different pieces of data.
Okay.
If you say to your agent, show me the contract draft we revised after the investor call last Tuesday, the OS doesn't look for a file literally named contract.
What does it do?
It understands the concept of the investor call. It knows who was on the call. It remembers the audio transcript of what was discussed, and it links that temporal event to the specific blocks of text that were altered in a document shortly afterward.
That is exactly how human memory works. I don't remember the file path of a conversation I had with you yesterday.
Right.
I remember the context, the room we were in, the emotional weight of the topic.
Which is brilliant for retrieval. It makes interacting with your computer perfectly natural, but
There's a but.
it raises a massive, immediate question about privacy.
Oh, absolutely.
If the OS mathematically maps every single contextual relationship in your entire life, who controls that map?
Because if a hacker gets that, they have your whole soul.
Exactly. The essay introduces a concept to handle this called permissioned memory.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because an AI that remembers everything I've ever said or looked at sounds initially terrifying to me.
It really does. Under AgentOS, your personal agent maintains a lifelong context thread.
The context thread.
Yes. It is a continuous, heavily encrypted log of your digital and physical interactions. But the architecture is built on the premise that this thread is a completely sovereign data vault.
Meaning I own it?
Yes. The text describes your life becoming a private data universe with controlled gravity.
I love the poetry of that. But how does that actually work in practice? If my personal agent knows my shoe size, and it also knows my banking details, how do I stop a retail agent from accessing my bank balance without my permission?
Through dynamic, cryptographically enforceable consent.
Which means?
Well, right now, our security model is completely static. You download an app, you blindly click accept on a 50-page terms of service you didn't read. We all are. And suddenly that app has permanent access to your camera, your microphone, and your contacts until you remember to turn it off.
Right.
AgentOS shifts this to agent-native security.
The essay compares this to a biological immune system. But I want to push on that metaphor a bit.
Okay.
It's a bit of a tech cliche to just say, oh, it's like an immune system.
Yeah.
What is the actual mechanism? How does an OS have white blood cells?
Fair question. Let's look at the math behind it. In the old model, cybersecurity is about building a castle wall, a firewall.
Keep the bad guys out.
Exactly. You use a password to keep bad actors outside the wall. But once someone breaches the wall, or if an app you trusted turns malicious, they have free reign inside the castle.
They can read everything in the kingdom.
Right. But in AgentOS, every single agent operates inside what the text calls sandbox trust zones.
So they are isolated.
Yes. Furthermore, every single action an agent attempts to take must produce a verifiable execution proof.
What is an execution proof?
It's a cryptographic mechanism, often utilizing zero-knowledge proofs, where an agent can mathematically prove it performed a specific authorized action without revealing the underlying data.
Give me an example.
So, let's say a third-party shopping agent is trying to find you a jacket. It is authorized to see your size.
Makes sense.
But if that shopping agent suddenly tries to query your banking context thread to see how much money you make to price gouge you,
Well,
it cannot provide the cryptographic proof that you authorized that specific query.
and the OS spots that failure instantly.
Instantly. The OS treats that unauthorized request exactly like a virus. It doesn't wait for you to click a pop-up asking for permission.
It just kills it.
It triggers an automatic rollback of the interaction, quarantines the suspicious shopping agent, severs its connection to your memory graph, and alerts you.
That is continuous dynamic mathematical defense.
It is the only way it works.
And that makes perfect sense. Because if you have a swarm of 50 agents negotiating on your behalf in the background, you cannot possibly be manually checking their work.
You'd go crazy.
You need the system to police itself. Which leads to another huge psychological shift the author brings up, which is metered compute.
Yes, metered compute.
In the 1980s desktop model, we don't ever think about the cost of a click. Clicking a folder is functionally free.
Right.
But in the agentic world, every complex workflow, every negotiation your agents perform requires heavy computational power. And that power has a tangible cost.
A very real cost. The essay lists the costs. Dollars, carbon, time, and privacy risk.
Let's play out a scenario so I can visualize this.
Okay, let's use that Tokyo prompt again. You tell your agent to find that vintage camera gear.
Right.
The agent might return and say, I can deploy a swarm to scrape the entire global dark web registry and every secondary market simultaneously right now. It will cost you $4.50 in compute, generate X amount of carbon, and take 12 seconds.
Okay.
Or I can run a passive low-energy search over the next week for 2 cents.
Wow. The paradigm shifts entirely. I am no longer a user operating a tool. I am a manager allocating a budget of invisible labor.
The manager of invisible labor. That is the exact reality the author describes.
That's wild.
And when you are managing invisible labor rather than manually clicking buttons, the physical interface you use has to evolve as well. We are fundamentally moving away from the screen.
Yes. The text traces this fascinating lineage of interfaces.
Right.
The graphical user interface pixels on a screen was a miracle because it gave abstract computing a visual language we could actually understand.
A huge leap forward.
Then came touch interfaces, the smartphone, which made computing intimate. It put the power literally against our skin.
Right.
But the next leap, according to the author, is the leap to what they call presence.
Presence. It means the interface stops being a physical tool you pick up and put down.
It's just there.
It becomes an intelligent, persistent layer between you and the physical world. It is a constant companion.
This means the absolute death of apps as we know them.
The App Store is dead.
Completely. I am no longer opening the Uber app, typing in an address,
Yeah.
and staring at a little pixelated car crawling across a map. I am just talking to my mobility agent. I am not scrolling an algorithmic feed on Instagram. I have a discovery agent that curates experiences based on my actual intent rather than an algorithm designed to harvest my outrage for engagement metrics.
Exactly. The author categorizes this new interface of presence into 3 distinct modes.
Really?
The first is conversational, and this is not barking stilted commands at a smart speaker hoping it understands your accent.
Set timer for 10 minutes.
Right.
Oh.
It is an always-on, context-aware dialogue. You can interrupt it, you can change your mind mid-sentence, and the OS adapts perfectly.
Actually, make it 15 minutes and remind me to check the oven.
Exactly. The second mode is spatial, or augmented.
Okay.
We're talking AR glasses, retinal projectors, holographic overlays. Your agents are literally painting meaning onto your physical reality.
That sounds incredible.
Picture this. You are walking down the street, you look at a restaurant, and your agent visually highlights it with a soft glow because it knows the menu perfectly matches your current dietary protocol and budget.
Without me even asking.
Without you asking. And the third and perhaps most profound mode is ambient.
This is the part that sounds like actual salvation to me.
Why is that?
Because right now, our devices are constantly screaming for our attention. Buzzing, pinging, red numerical badges everywhere. It's exhausting.
It is an attention economy.
But the ambient mode means the OS stays completely quiet until actual value is created or a genuine risk is detected.
There's a direct quote from the essay that sums this up. The goal is not more notifications. The goal is less noise and more intention.
It's the end of notification hell.
Truly.
Your agents act like a hyper-competent chief of staff, negotiating priority on your behalf. If an email arrives and it isn't urgent, you don't even know it happened.
Right.
The agent handles it, categorizes it, and maybe gives you a 3-bullet summary when you specifically ask for your daily briefing.
It sounds incredibly serene, doesn't it?
It sounds like peace.
But from an engineering standpoint, creating that serenity raises an almost insurmountable technical hurdle.
Because of the coordination problem.
Exactly. For your personal agent to book that Tokyo flight, negotiate the capsule hotel, check the vintage camera forums, and sync with your contacts.
Okay, yeah.
It has to interact with the airline's corporate agent, the hotel's booking agent, the calendar agents of your friends, and the retail agents on eBay.
It's a massive, chaotic conversation happening in the background.
Billions of non-human actors transacting, negotiating, and executing at machine speed, 247. And here is the brutal, unavoidable truth the author points out.
Lay it on me.
The current architecture of the internet will completely collapse under their weight.
Okay, we have to unpack this. Why does the internet break? The internet we have today, HTTP, TCP/IP, DNS, it feels so robust.
It feels robust to us.
I mean, it handles Netflix streaming and global banking seamlessly.
Right. It handles a high volume of simple requests.
Okay.
TCP/IP, which is the foundational protocol of the internet, is essentially a dumb postal service.
A dumb postal service.
Yeah. It takes a packet of data, slaps an address on it, and routes it to a server. It doesn't care what's inside the packet. It was built for humans opening static web pages, reading text, and clicking links. It was absolutely not built for a global swarm of autonomous AI agents conducting high-frequency, multi-step commerce, where trust and verification have to be established in milliseconds.
So we can't just upgrade the servers and add more bandwidth. We have to rip out the plumbing.
We have to invent new plumbing entirely, which is why the author introduces the concept of rebuilding cyberspace, creating a new foundational protocol layer called AgentNet, or the intent protocol.
The intent protocol. Let's get into the deep mechanics of this new internet. What does this protocol actually require? Because the essay lists very specific, non-negotiable necessities to make this work.
The first one is intent-native addressing.
Okay.
Currently, we address resources on the internet using URL's uniform resource locators.
Right, the web address.
You type in a specific web address to go to a specific server. You go to delta.com to find a flight. But in AgentNet, you address resources by meaning or intent.
Okay, let's use a metaphor here to make this concrete. The old internet is like calling a specific restaurant on the phone and hoping they have a table available at 8 p.m.
Right. It's a one-to-one connection.
And intent-native addressing. What is that like?
So, intent-native addressing.
It's like walking into a massive magical town square and shouting, "Who will feed me a medium rare burger for exactly $15 right now?"
I love that.
And instantly, 3 chefs sprint toward you with competing offers. You broadcast an intent to the network. Cheapest carbon-negative flight, Tokyo, April 15.
Yes.
And the network dynamically matches that intent with the specific agents that can fulfill it. The web shifts from being a static library of pages to a massive, real-time marketplace of goals.
That is a perfect visualization. But in a marketplace moving at machine speed, trust is paramount.
Obviously.
Which brings us to the second requirement of the protocol: verifiable identity for both humans and agents.
Identity again.
The author is adamant that every single agent operating on this new internet must have a cryptographic identity, a reputation score, and a clear chain of accountability.
Because if they don't, you just have a sea of anonymous, malicious bots wreaking havoc.
Exactly. The text specifically says anonymous swarms cannot be allowed to become the default.
That makes total sense.
If an agent commits fraud, the protocol needs to know exactly who deployed that agent and revoke their network privileges instantly.
You need a license plate on the car.
Precisely. And once you have absolute verifiable identity, you can enable the third critical requirement: atomic settlement and escrow.
Atomic settlement. Break that down for us.
So agentic commerce requires trustless exchange.
Okay.
Your personal agent doesn't know or trust the capsule hotel's booking agent. They have never met, they have no relationship.
Right.
So the protocol must ensure that your agent releases payment only at the exact millisecond the counterparty's agent provides verifiable cryptographic proof that the reservation is secured.
It happens atomically.
Yeah.
Indivisibly. The payment and the service are swapped simultaneously, so neither side can scam the other.
And it happens without needing Visa or MasterCard to sit in the middle and take a 3% fee.
That is going to upset some people.
Oh, the legacy financial institutions are going to fight this tooth and nail. But to make all of this function smoothly, the protocol also requires native translation layers.
Translation layer.
Yeah. The essay describes translating natural human language, like your verbal request for a Tokyo trip, into formal, machine-verifiable protocol messages with built-in audit trails.
Oh, I see. So if the wrong flight gets booked?
You can look at the cryptographic log and see exactly which agent in the chain made the error. It wasn't a glitch, it was Agent X misinterpreting constraint Y.
Accountability baked into the code.
Yeah.
And finally, the protocol demands absolute ironclad rate limiting right.
Traffic laws for the internet.
Because otherwise,
Without severe rate limiting, a poorly coded agent, or a malicious one, could accidentally send 1 billion requests a second trying to find a cheaper pair of shoes and essentially DDoS the entire planet.
just melt the servers down.
Exactly.
It's just staggering to think about the scale of this engineering challenge.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about dealing with more internet traffic here.
No, not all.
As the text says, this is an entirely new species entering cyberspace. If we don't build these protocols, the future isn't a frictionless utopia of abundance. It's total gridlocked congestion.
Yeah.
The network just melts down.
Which is exactly what brings this entire sprawling essay full circle.
Right back to the start.
The author takes the staggering technological blueprint, Agent OS, the intent protocol, the interface of presence, and marries it back to the fierce moral argument we debated at the very beginning of the deep dive.
The poverty firewall.
Yes. He outlines a very specific sequence, a virtuous cycle that must be actively engineered by us.
And the sequence goes exactly like this, if I'm tracking it right. End poverty,
Step 1.
which establishes a baseline of trust globally, which allows elite actors to actually coordinate on AI safety, which makes it actually safe to deploy AgentOS and the intent protocol, which unleashes agentic commerce, which finally generates true planetary abundance.
It is a critical path. You cannot skip steps.
You can't just jump to the abundance part.
No, because it collapses.
Yeah.
Let's look at the sheer economic implications of that agentic commerce step for a second.
Okay.
When you have billions of agents discovering counterparties, negotiating complex contracts, settling payments instantly, and reinvesting profits 204/7 without human fatigue,
It's mind-boggling.
a single human managing a swarm of agents could have the economic output of an entire multinational corporation today.
Just one person in their living room.
The text predicts civilization-level phase changes. We are talking about triple-digit economic growth.
Which is unheard of.
It is the ultimate acceleration of value creation. Humanity essentially builds a perpetual motion machine for wealth.
But, and this is the massive flashing warning light of the whole essay, the reason we spent so much time on the moral prerequisite. If we unleash this incredible economic engine into a world where billions of people are still trapped in extreme poverty,
Right.
excluded from the basic digital highway, we aren't building a utopia.
No, we are building a dystopia of unprecedented scale.
As the author brilliantly puts it, we are building a gated paradise surrounded by a sea of despair.
It becomes feudalism with better branding.
Wow, feudalism.
Think about it. The wealthy get a swarm of agents, making them exponentially richer while they sleep.
Right.
And the global poor are still struggling to find clean drinking water. The gap between the top and the bottom becomes mathematically unbridgeable.
It's locked in forever.
Forever. This is the ultimate synthesis of Bogut's argument. This is exactly why the author demands that 10% equity from the frontier AI founders.
It's a toll to cross the bridge.
Yeah, exactly. It isn't just about the money. The money is a mechanism. The 10% equity is framed as the ultimate, undeniable proof that the AI elite can actually coordinate around a fundamental moral baseline.
Because if they can't,
If they cannot coordinate to share a fraction of their future wealth to uplift the bottom tier of humanity, they will never be able to coordinate to stop a rogue superintelligence.
the trust just won't be there.
The societal systems will be misaligned from day one.
The author warns that without that moral down payment, the agentic future isn't a golden age. It's a high-speed train with no brakes, heading straight for a fractured, hyper-stratified reality.
It's a sobering thought.
Wow. Okay, let's take a breath here. We have covered a staggering amount of ground in this deep dive.
We really have.
We started by eulogizing the 1980s desktop metaphor, looking at how the entire paradigm of files, folders, and manual clicks is about to be wiped out by AgentoS and semantic knowledge graphs.
The death of the desktop.
We explored how our interfaces are moving from glowing screens to ambient, intelligent companions that negotiate reality on our behalf.
Presence.
We unpacked the plumbing of the intent protocol, where the internet becomes a marketplace of goals rather than a library of links.
And crucially, we learned that this entire architectural revolution is entirely dependent on an economic and moral revolution.
Right.
Upgrading our tech safely fundamentally requires upgrading our global economic baseline through massive, foundation-led direct cash transfers funded by the very creators of this new era.
Think about the last time you sat down at your computer. Look at all those little app icons, every notification you swipe away, every file you manually search for, every password you type.
All that friction.
Now imagine a world where all of that manual friction is replaced by a silent, hyper-competent swarm of agents. It is coming faster than any of us truly comprehend.
The transition is already underway. The tools are being built right now in labs all over the world.
But the source leaves us with a profound, unavoidable challenge regarding how we make that transition.
Oh, it does.
What is the final thought we should be wrestling with today as we wrap this up?
Well, the author argues that true abundance is utterly impossible without inclusion.
Okay.
As we prepare to birth this new non-human species into cyberspace, I want you to ask yourself a question.
Yeah.
When your personal agent looks out at the digital world to optimize your life, what kind of world do you want it to see? Do you want it to see a landscape of shared, universally accessible digital infrastructure?
Yeah.
Or do you want it to see a world of heavily guarded digital fortresses surrounded by exclusion?
A shared nervous system for humanity or a luxury network for the privileged.
Exactly.
It is a choice we have to make right now before the concrete of this new architecture sets. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Keep looking closely at the tech you use, stay incredibly curious, and keep questioning the architecture of the future. We'll catch you next time.